Last fall, there was a time when I was searching for an old camera. I was particularly interested in vintage photography and found a rare model on Craigslist. The seller was offering it for $100. He claimed the camera was still perfectly functional and in excellent condition. Being nearly a novice about cameras, I brought along my friend Mike, who is an expert on cameras. We agreed to meet the seller in the parking lot of an abandoned factory. It was evening, and the sun had already set. The seller, a large man, descended from his old truck, his eyes fixating on us. He began to extol the virtues of the camera. Mike took it, performed a few checks, and confirmed everything was in order. However, at that moment, the seller raised the price to $150. It was unexpected, but feeling the camera was worth it, I agreed without bargaining. We paid in cash, and the seller returned to his truck but didn't leave immediately, seeming to fiddle with something inside. Leaving the spot, Mike and I started to examine the camera in his car. Shortly after, Mike looked at me as if he noticed something. From the direction of the factory, another vehicle entered the parking lot and headed straight towards us. Mike quickly started the engine and left the parking lot. Yet the truck began to follow us. At first, we thought it was coincidence, but no matter how we turned, the truck kept on our tail. Mike accelerated, trying to understand what was happening, but the truck relentlessly closed in. We ended up taking a secluded road, eventually turning into a forest path where we decided to hide. While hidden, we saw the truck pass by. After a while, it didn't return, and we felt relieved. However, when we got back to the car, we found an old photo inside the camera. It was taken at the factory, and the person in the photo seemed to be pointing right at us. The face was the same as the seller's. We hurried home and spent the night without speaking of it, but the event left us deeply unsettled. Since then, we have been very cautious with Craigslist transactions, and the camera remained in our house as a memory of the eerie event. No one dared to use it, as the world it captured seemed somehow distorted. Weeks later, I met another friend interested in the camera, fascinated by the supernatural. Upon hearing the story, he was excited to take pictures with it. We went back to the factory, but this time with a different purpose. Upon arrival, the atmosphere felt entirely different, as if something was waiting for our presence. My friend took photos of the parking lot where we first met the seller. After finishing, we left immediately to develop the photos at home. Among the developed photos were several unexplainable shadows, appearing human-shaped but unnaturally blurred. Most shockingly, the seller's figure was clearly visible in the spot where he last stood, but his face was different. The eyes were hollow, and the mouth was unnaturally wide open. Since that night, we feared even touching the camera. It felt not just like a machine, but like a gateway to something else. Something seemed to awaken in the photos we took. Once fresh out of college, I saw a solitary challenge and spent weeks backpacking through the untouched wilderness of Canada. I was in places so remote, the breath of civilization was nowhere to be felt. The nearest town could only be reached by a 3-hour bus journey, during which the only sound was the whisper of the wind. Throughout those 7 days, the only other soul I encountered was a person gliding on the water in a canoe, far in the distance. In that era, digital cameras were not as ubiquitous as they are today, so my journey was captured through the lens of several disposable cameras. Mesmerized by the raw beauty of nature, driven by an impulse to capture each fleeting moment, I continuously clicked the camera's shutter, immortalizing the rugged landscapes that stretched endlessly before me. After a particularly exhausting day of trekking through dense forests and crossing whispering streams, the need for rest became undeniable at dusk. I found a secluded spot, a small clearing embraced by ancient trees, where the whispers of the wilderness were both comforting and mysterious. Beneath the twilight sky, I pitched my tent as a modest, solitary shelter amidst the vast Canadian wilds. Lying there, the line between the day's exhaustion and the onset of sleep blurred. The sounds of the forest, a distant owl's call, the rustle of leaves, the gentle sigh of the wind became the lullaby that lulled me into dreams. Upon my return and after developing the film, what I found were photographs that beautifully captured the stillness and grandeur of the wilderness. However, this sense of peace was abruptly shattered as I browsed through about halfway of the first camera's roll. There, amidst the serene landscapes, were two photographs that made my blood run cold. These images captured me asleep, wrapped tightly in my sleeping bag, but the angles were unnervingly intimate, as if the photographer had been looming directly over me. One photo was taken from a vantage point at the foot of my makeshift bed, looking up at my face, half buried in the sleeping bag, illuminated by the soft glow of the morning. The other was even more disturbing, a close-up taken from just beside my resting body, capturing the details of my face in slumber with such clarity that you could see the peaceful, unaware expression of my sleep. The realization that someone had been this close, silently documenting my most vulnerable moments, without any recollection on my part, sent a jolt of terror through me. How could these photographs exist when I have no memory of taking them, nor inviting anyone into my tent? It was a moment of pure horror. My mind froze, and I lost all sense of balance, as the eerie feeling of being watched settled into my bones. Since then, I've never gone camping again, and at home, I sleep with the door and the curtains closed. In the corner of my mind, there's always a lurking fear that the person who took those photos is still out there watching me. Night after night, their presence feels stronger, more certain, eroding my peace of mind. This fear has become the darkest and most unexpected legacy of my journey through the Canadian wilderness. On a late Friday night, we were in search of another adventure. That day, we had received an invitation to a secret exhibition held in an underground art gallery. Losing track of time, we realized we needed to hurry and quickly prepare to leave. I grabbed my camera and backpack, and together with my friends, we rushed out of the house. Somehow, we managed to arrive at the gallery just in time for the exhibition. After spending a few hours there, I reached into my pockets and was shocked to find my camera missing. I checked every pocket and asked my friends if they had seen it, but it was nowhere to be found. We searched the gallery and the areas we had been in together, but ultimately, we couldn't find it. Just as we were about to give up, my phone suddenly rang, cutting through the silence like a sharp knife. The caller ID was unknown, adding an extra layer of mystery to the already tense situation. Hesitantly, I answered. "Hello," I said. There was no reply, but alongside the strange whispering on the other end, the unmistakable sound of a camera shutter echoed through the phone. A few seconds later, as I gathered my thoughts to speak again, the call was abruptly ended. The combination of the whispering and the familiar sound of my camera shutter intensified my frustration over the theft. However, it was late, and there was nothing I could do about it at that moment. About an hour later, after leaving the otherworldly display of the gallery and dropping my friends off at their homes, I headed home alone through the dark, quiet streets. The headlights of my car were the only source of illumination, casting long shadows on the road. As I drove, I desperately tried to recall the last moment I had my camera with me, but my memory was as foggy as the night. As I pulled into my driveway, it suddenly dawned on me I hadn't forgotten my camera at the gallery. I had left it on the dining table that morning in my haste. As I parked the car, I had an eerie feeling that something was amiss. The night's silence held a suffocating tension, unlike its usual peacefulness. My hand trembled slightly as I inserted the key and opened the door. Stepping inside, the chill in the air made my unease deepen. Turning on the lights did nothing to dispel the silence of the house. Instead, it felt as if something was intently watching me. Slowly, as if being pulled by an unseen force, I made my way to the bedroom. Opening the door and turning on the light, my heart pounded against the quiet of the night. There, on the table, lay my camera, exactly where I thought I had left it. However, instead of relief, a chilling fear overtook me. The camera's position was slightly off from where I remembered placing it, as if someone had touched it. I searched the entire house, from corner to corner, closets, the basement, even inside the closets, but found no sign of an intruder. Yet, this fact did not ease my anxiety, it only intensified it. Why had the camera moved if the house was supposed to be empty, and who had called me, and why? That night I cowled in sleep. Every little noise seemed to whisper threats of unseen horrors. Lying in bed, I questioned my safety and pondered what truly happened that night. The wind tapping at the windows suggested the imminent arrival of something sinister, keeping sleep at bay. My heart's beating echoed in my ears, stiffening my body with every faint sound that seemed to come from every corner of the house. All night, my mind battled with fear, confronting the darkness filled with questions. Was it merely a coincidence? Or was someone intentionally trying to frighten me? Or was it something even more inexplicable and unexplainable? When morning came, the night's terrors felt like a distant dream. Yet the fact that my camera had moved slightly was undeniable. I shared my story with friends, who were equally horrified by my experience. We considered contacting the police but were unsure how to explain it or what to expect, given the lack of physical evidence of any break-in. In the end, we decided to carry on with our lives, burdened by this unsettling event, living with the anxiety and doubt it had instilled in us. Years have passed, but that night has never fully left my mind. Occasionally, on quiet nights, the memory suddenly resurfaces, compelling me to ponder what happened and why. Why had my camera moved on its own? What was the source of the whispers on the phone? Above all, what was the true source of the deep fear I felt? These questions remain unanswered to this day. This experience taught me about the fear of the unseen and how unexpected events can seep into our daily lives. Sometimes, The most ordinary things can hold the deepest mysteries and fears. And I've learned that unanswered questions can be the most unsettling of all.